Good.
Okay. Okay. Good afternoon in the Cameroon, but in here Indonesia. No, I'm sorry. Good morning in the Cameroon, but in Indonesia, good afternoon. Yeah.
Oh yes, it's morning here.
Yeah. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the international webinar series STEMIC Bandung. STEMIC Bandung, West Java, Indonesia. This is the first series of the webinar with the topic about strategies to build innovation and industrialization of digital product. Especially for today's webinar is about how can entrepreneurs leverage disruptive innovation to enter major markets and industries. I'm Dani, will be the moderator. I am one of the lecturers at STEMIC Bandung. We apologize because actually the moderator, Elsa, early in the morning was getting sick, so I will be the moderator for this webinar. Yeah. Today we will listen to some presentation on the webinar together with our special guest star. Yeah, first, Lambert Yubin. Yeah. Lambert Yubin, yeah. He's head of analysis and digital transformation at Visit Lea. Visit Lea?
Yeah, Beasley Consulting.
Beasley Consulting, yeah. Beasley Consulting, yeah. And second speaker, our chairman, Dr. Abdul Rahman. He is chairman of STEMIC Bandung and Summit Bangun Indonesia. This webinar was attended by students, professionals, and the public who are interested in this topic. Yeah. First, Mr. Lambert. Before Mr. Lambert will explain about this topic, Pak Abdul Rahman, would you mind giving the opening remarks, please?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Dani. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Yes, good morning, Mr. Lambert Yubin.
Good morning,
Yeah.
Dr. Abdul Rahman.
Yeah, good morning in Cameroon and good afternoon for our participant in Indonesia. We have 6 hours difference time between Indonesia and Cameroon. Yeah. Thank you very much for your time to join us in our international webinar. That Mr. Dani said that STEMIC Bandung and Solmit Academy in this period from February to March 2021 will hold an international webinar on strategies for building innovation and industrialization of digital business products. Yeah. So in this webinar series, there are several speakers, including the first speaker is Mr. Lambert Yubin. Yeah. I know Mr. Lambert from my network in LinkedIn, yeah, and I have some paper from Mr. Lambert Yubin from his website, yeah. So Mr. Lambert, I think, very professional and has some competency and skill in digital transformation, yeah. And the second speaker, yeah, for 2 weeks, next 2 weeks, Mrs. Ifat Ar-Rawaiti from Saudi Arabia, Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, and Jeff Felix, CEO from SetNexus, and Dr. Mark, Professor Luxembourg Business School. My brother, Mr. Lambert Yubin, I thank you again with you that now this is your time to open this webinar about how to build innovation strategies in digital business. Yeah. As we know that the growth of digital business has progressed very rapidly as we know. It is predicted that revenue from digital business will reach 2/3 of the income of all countries in the world by 2025. So to run and improve the performance of digital business, an innovation strategy and industrialization of digital business product is needed. One of the most important challenge in digital business, I think, is how to build a sustainable innovation strategy according to our company characteristics, business trends, and technology trends. So strategy in digital business is how to increase added value for all stakeholders, especially for our clients, for our customer. In this webinar opportunity, we will discuss with our brother, Mr. Lambert Yubin. He is from Cameroon, and Mr. Lambert has some competencies in digital transformation. Mr. Lambert lead in digital transformation practitioner and consultant, as I know. And I know him for his various writings on the importance and contribution in digital transformation in business and the digital economy. So I hope we can learn and discuss with Mr. Lambert about the digital business innovation strategy so that we can play an active role in building a digital economy that is oriented towards the benefit of mankind. So this is my opening speech for this webinar. I thank again to Mr. Lambert. So welcome to Indonesia.
All right, thank you so much, Dr. Abdurrahman. So I can go ahead and share my screen.
Yes, okay, thank you.
All right.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Abdurrahman. So I will read a summary of curriculum vitae for Mr. Lambert. For 8 years now, Mr. Lambert has been at the forefront of digital transformation initiatives, managing programs and projects, and helping business to initiate and drive disruptive innovations. That's why he's now in this webinar to explain about how can entrepreneurs leverage disruptive innovation to enter major markets and industries. So please welcome. Now it's your turn, Mr. Lambert. Your time.
All right. Thank you so much, Danny.
Yeah.
And good morning, good afternoon, or good evening to everyone, wherever you find yourself in the world. And I'm so happy to join you today on this webinar, where I'm going to share with you my experience and some knowledge on how entrepreneurs can leverage disruptive innovation in order to enter mature markets and industries. So we are going to start by understanding the keywords on this topic. The main keywords on this topic are the disruptive innovation. And then as we have entrepreneurs as one of among our audience, we are going to show how we can leverage this disruptive innovation in order to enter markets that are already established or industries that are already considered to be mature. So we'll start right away by looking at one of the most popular cautionary tales of disruption. And there are so many of them, but I chose to show this one, which is the story of Netflix and Blockbuster. I think most of you should know about this story already. So back in the 2000s, Blockbuster was a very successful company, and they had around 9,000 stores all over the world and around 60,000 employees. And as you can see on this graph, around 2004, they had a peak in their revenue, which jumped to around $6 billion. But what happened? It only took 12 years for Netflix to disrupt Blockbuster's movie rental business. And that sent Blockbuster to declare bankruptcy. in the early 2012. So it is very, was really a strange phenomenon at that time, where you see that a small startup like Netflix that comes to the market and starts with almost zero revenue, ends up turning around a company that has been existing and has been succeeding and has been so powerful in a particular space. So this is just an example, and we'll now try to understand what disruption is all about. So this actually represents a general phenomenon called disruption. And this phenomenon of disruption was, the word disruption was first coined by the Harvard Business School professor, Professor Clayton Christensen, who is the author of The Innovation Dilemma. This is the person who first of all coined the word disruption. And I like to refer to what he said about disruption when he first coined this word, because it helps us to lay the grounds on how to understand what disruption is and what it is not. Because the word disruption today is usually misused to mean so many things, especially when people talk about innovation. So what did he say? It's quite long, but let's look at it together. So he said that disruption describes a process whereby a small company with fewer resources is able to successfully challenge established incumbent businesses. And to be specific, what do the small company do in order to do that? They specifically, the incumbents focus on improving their products and services for their most demanding customers. They end up exceeding some of the needs of some of the segments and then ignore the needs of others. And then entrants, which are small companies, small entrepreneurs who enter the market, what they do is that they prove disruptive. Entrants that prove disruptive begin by successfully targeting those overlooked segments that were ignored by the incumbents, and then gain a foothold by delivering more suitable functionality, frequently at a lower price. And what do the incumbents generally do when this happens? So when they keep chasing higher profitability in more demanding segments, they tend to ignore to respond, okay? And then the entrants keep on moving up the market, and at the end they disrupt the incumbent. So what you need to know here is you need to know the use of the word incumbent and entrant. Incumbent is an existing company that is already in the market. And then an entrant is a new company that comes to that market. Okay, so we are going to use these words very, very much as we are talking about disruption. So when we talk about incumbent, you need to understand that that is a company that is already successful in a mature business, or a mature industry. And then the entrant is that new company, which is often small, that ends up disrupting it. And so this is this is what we are going to talk about today. We'll start by looking at the three types of innovation. So you understand that not every innovation is a disruption. So look at the three types of innovation. Then we'll move to a very important concept called discovering customer jobs, which is a very important concept when you come to innovation, especially in the disruption. And then when we must have understood the types of innovation and the concept of customer jobs to be done, we will now move to how you as an entrepreneur or you as a company can leverage this disruptive innovation in order to enter mature markets. So we'll start with the three types of innovation. And the three types of innovation are sustaining innovation, low-end disruptive innovation, and new market innovation. So we'll look at each of them in turn. So sustaining innovations, they target the most profitable customers that are willing to pay for improved performance. So consider this graph here. you see that most companies that are already operate in mature industries or markets, they mostly segment their market. They segment their market into the low-end market, the mainstream, and the high-end market. And then the high-end market includes those customers that are the most profitable. And then the low-end market includes customers that are the least profitable. And then somewhere in the middle, you have the mainstream customers. So sustaining innovation are all the improvements that the company does in order to satisfy the needs of the most profitable customers. So most companies that are existing in mature companies, most companies that are in mature industries, their main target is to satisfy the needs of their most profitable customers. And so every other thing that they do to improve the product performance with time puts them on this trajectory. And we'll see how disruptive innovation comes to put down a business that is focused on sustaining innovation. So one thing you need to note about the sustaining innovation is that the incumbent, it is the incumbent that does this, because the incumbent is a business that already, the company that already exists and is already operating in a particular industry. And so with sustaining innovation, they don't change the business model. It is the same business model. And what they do is they try to improve the profit margin by exploiting their existing processes and cost structure. An example of this, an example of sustaining innovation is, you can look at the story of Blockbuster and Netflix again. So in this story, which is very interesting, you see that in the early stages of Netflix, when Netflix just launched, Blockbuster was pursuing sustaining innovation. So they had shops, physical shops in many countries, and they were increasing the number of shops every time in order to bring their services closer and closer to the customers. Those are sustaining innovation, and every other thing that they did in order to satisfy their most important customers. But now what happened is that Netflix really started. They did not start by launching the online version that is very popular today. What they did is that they started with movie rentals, just the same like Blockbuster. And later on, they added another option called the mailing option, where they could mail DVDs to customers in their homes. So these were sustaining innovations because there was no change in business model. And what happened is that when Netflix launched the mailing option, Blockbuster also launched their own because it was easy for them to copy, since there was no change in the business model. So sustaining innovations, the message you should take from here is that it's very hard for an entrant to defeat an incumbent in sustaining innovation. And so these are the key things that you need to focus here, that you need to understand about sustaining innovation. Incumbents typically win. They typically win the race of sustaining innovation. And the incumbents always have, this is because they always focus on their most profitable customers. And the entrants usually lack the sufficient resources they need in order to compete for these high-value customers. And any time that the entrants try to go head on in order to try to get market share from the higher end of the market, where the most profitable customers are, the reaction is always automatic. The incumbents are always very fast to react. And they even go as far as copying the innovation of the entrant. So sustaining innovation is not always a good idea for an entrant. This is very important to anyone who is an entrepreneur that is thinking of entering an industry. You don't need to go head on with the players that are already established in the industry. We are going to see another type of innovation, which is a disruptive innovation that you can leverage in order to enter the market. Because if you try to enter the market through sustaining innovation, there are high chances that the incumbent is going to react in such a way that they will drive you out of the market. So that is, we have seen the definition of sustaining innovation. And now let's look at the second, which is low-end disruptive innovation. So the low-end disruptive innovation, unlike the sustaining innovation, they target overserved customers at the low end of the market. So when we talk about overserved, let me explain. Now you see, you have three segments in the market: the low end, the high end, and then somewhere in the middle you have the mainstream. So what happens is that as the incumbent, which is a company that is already existing in that industry, a company like Blockbuster, for example, the incumbent spends time improving their product performance in order to satisfy the most important customers at the high end of the market. And then what happens? What they do is that when they do this, then they tend to ignore the customers that are found at the low end of the market, or they tend to give the product performance that is far higher than what the low end market actually expects. So in that case, that's why we say that this low end market is overserved, because they are overserved with very high performance. Meanwhile, they just need the minimum performance of the product. And so what happens is that an entrant enters the market and targets this low-end market with a product that is, or service that is just good enough. So a service that is just good enough for this market and at a lower price, they give this market an opportunity to access a similar product or service to that of the incumbent, so which just satisfy their needs and which is not as expensive as that of the incumbent. And what happens? How does the incumbent react to this? They usually neglect the effort of the entrant at the low end of the market. They neglect it because, after all, they are focusing on, they are serving the least profitable customers. And so, since their target is the most profitable customers, they tend to move up. So they tend to refuse to lower their prices in order to compete with the entrants at the low end of the market, because it's not worth it. They need to focus on 20% of the customers that give them 80% of their revenue. And so when they move up, you see that they keep on moving up. And at this point, they have already, the performance that they're giving has already surpassed the needs of the mainstream market. And as they have moved beyond the mainstream market, you see that the entrant product keeps on getting better and better in performance. As it gets better and better in performance, they are able to target the mainstream market. So at the end of this, you see that the entrant has already captured the low-end market and the mainstream market. And the incumbent now is only at the level of the high end. And with time, when the performance of the entrance product or service will be good enough to address the needs of the high-end market at a lower price, the incumbent will be sent out of the market. And this is what actually happens. This is the phenomenon of low-end disruptive innovation. And you can see that what happened, the incumbent actually implements a new business model that utilizes a new operating or financial approach in order to earn attractive returns at lower prices. And that's why they succeed. And so this is important to you as a business leader or an entrepreneur, Because if you want to enter an industry, you need to look at the low end of that industry. You need to see if there are neglected customers, if they are neglected or ignored segments of the market, that you can provide a good enough solution that will solve their problem, and in such a way that the incumbent will even ignore your effort and give you time to learn and move up to capture the market share. Now, a good example of low-end disruptive innovation, we'll look at the education industry. So here, the incumbents, we can consider the incumbents. You can look at the traditional universities where you have just have the traditional classroom education. So what they do is that they concentrate on creating more and more programs that are going to, the programs that get more and more expensive and with higher and higher quality, of course. And their target is to have the students that will pay for those programs. So they are very interested in people who are going to pay for those programs. Like when you hear of very expensive MBA programs or finance programs, all of those programs, they are the efforts of the traditional education system. So as they do this, in fact, as they did this, because the disruption has already started, what happens is that the online learning platforms that came up some years back, what they did is that they identified that most people do not need full programs like MBA programs, like very large programs. Most people do not need that. Most people are working and they don't have time to travel and attend classroom education. And most of them just want the relevant skills that will help them to get some promotions or to change their job, or in fact they just need the basics. They need something that is just good enough. And so what happened is that the online learning platforms understood this, and then they gave an alternative to the learners that just wish to acquire the skills that they need at low cost. And that made it possible for people to take online courses, and that are just subsets of the programs. And what we have observed is that as time keeps on going, the online platforms are getting more and more significant market space, and the traditional universities are also trying to react to this and joining the online movement. So this is an example of a low-end disruptive innovation. Now, the key points you need to take from this is that entrants typically win the low-end disruptive battle. And that is an opportunity for entrepreneurs. Typically, when you hear of innovations, when you hear of disruptions, entrants typically win low-end disruptive battles, unlike the sustaining battles that incumbents win. So this happens because incumbents always pursue efficiency by focusing on 20% of the customers that generate 80% of their revenue. So they focus on those customers at the high end of the market. And then they end up neglecting customers at the low end of the market. Those customers that are neglected at the low end of the market, they actually represent a market entry opportunity for the entrants. And what we usually see is that incumbents typically ignore what the entrants are doing at the low end of the market. Like if you were vigilant on the graph that we showed about Netflix, you see that somewhere around 2000, the Blockbuster refused to buy Netflix. So they had that deal on their table. They refused to buy Netflix at $50 million. So that just shows that they did not believe that Netflix was going to succeed. And so low-end disruptive innovation is a good choice for you as an entrepreneur who wants to enter an industry that already has established players. Now let's look at the third type of innovation, which is the new market disruptive innovation. The new market disruptive innovation targets non-consumption. So they target customers that are not consuming a service, a particular service. So you want to disrupt a product or a company. You need to look at those customers that are not able to consume the product and service that company is providing. For example, in fact, customers that historically lack the money, they could lack the skills. Maybe some products need some skills in order to use, or they could lack the access to use the product. An example is when you look at Blockbuster, you see that Blockbuster was giving the movies in physical stores, okay? And not everybody had access to those stores. So there was a good opportunity to extend that service to customers that we are not yet consuming the service. So this is how it works. So what happens is that the new market innovation, the new market disruptive innovation, they provide performance, they provide lower performance at traditional attributes. Traditional attributes are the attributes that the sustaining, the incumbent is very good at. Okay, but they give improved performance in new attributes like simplicity and convenience. So instead of fighting only in this space, they move actually to create a new space, like it's really a new market. And let's see how, with an example. Like a good example is still Netflix. You see that Netflix around 2000 and maybe 2007, yes, around 2007, Netflix launched the streaming platform, which is what we use today. The streaming platform where you can have access to so many movies at low cost, right at the convenience of your home. So this was what was absent. This was absent in the business model of Blockbuster, because somebody somewhere in the world, people in different places in the world, they could not move to countries where Blockbuster had stores. So Netflix, when they launched this streaming platform, they gave access to customers who initially lacked the money because the offer was cheaper, or the people who could not access the physical stores. And this led to the disruption of the movie store business model in which Blockbuster excelled. And you see that what is important here is that Netflix actually became very good. They gave good performance in new attributes. The new attribute here was convenience and accessibility, and maybe price. So this is because they extended the reach of the movie to so many people all over the world at a lower price, and gave people the convenience of using the service right from their home. So that's an example just to illustrate again what new market disruptive innovation is. Now, it may be confusing for you to differentiate between the different types of innovation, but here are some key points that you can have in mind that can guide you to be able to identify and separate them. So the sustaining innovation. So we look at the key attributes are the target customer and the performance. Sustaining innovation, they target the most profitable and demanding customers. Why? And what they do is that they provide those customers with the highest product performance possible. While the low-end disruptive innovations target overserved customers. So overserved customers are the customers at the low end of the market that just want a service or product that is good enough. They don't want all those features that the incumbent is providing, which are only maybe relevant for the high end of the market that is ready to pay high amounts to use. They just need the minimum service and the performance that is just good enough. And then the new market disruptive innovations, they target customers not currently consuming. So they target non-consumption, just like the case of Netflix that you saw that they discovered that a lot of people wanted to use these movies, not only in the US where a lot of the Blockbuster and all those stores were located. They noticed that a lot of people, even around the world, needed to have access to this. And the best way to do this was to target those people that we are not yet using the service and give them access to the service through an online channel, which was more efficient to reach those people. And the performance attribute for the new market innovation is that they bring a new measure of performance. So instead of competing with the incumbent on the current measure of performance, they really bring a new measure of performance. Now, this is another important concept that you need to understand, because the word disruption is often wrongly used today in the market by professionals. There are so many innovations that are not disruptive. If you have understood the difference between the types of innovation, you understand that there are some innovations that are sustaining, and there are so many of them that are sustaining, and not all innovations are disruptive. So disruption is actually a relative term. A new product or business model is only disruptive relative to an existing product or business model. So you cannot say that something on its own is disruptive. You need to compare it with another thing. For example, you hear people talking about disruptive technology, that this technology is disruptive. It's true that technologies enable disruptions, but a technology by itself is not intrinsically disruptive. It only depends on how that technology has been deployed into the market relative to the existing products and services. And another thing is that when you look at the low end and the new market disruptions, they are very close together. The line between them is really small. And when you look at most of the innovation of the disruptive innovation, you see that they have both the low end and the new market disruptions in them. So it's always something in between the low end and the new market disruptive innovation. So it's hard to find a disruptive innovation that is only low end and doesn't have something about the new market. So most of them are always have something, but there's an aspect that dominates. But you can say that this disruptive innovation is more of new market than low end. So you need to keep that in mind. And then one thing you also need to keep in mind, which I keep insisting on, is that incumbents typically win sustaining innovation battles. So if you are entering a new market or a new industry as an entrepreneur and you choose a sustaining innovation, you're ready to receive a counter reaction from the incumbent, which is often such as to send you out of the market, because they won't allow you to access and serve and capture their best customers that are giving them 80% of their revenue. And new market disruptive innovation battles, because those are the battles where you operate at the low end of the market, where at the low end of the market, where the incumbent will first ignore what you are doing for some time before paying attention. Maybe when you start taking market share from other segments above the low market. So as an entrepreneur, we have looked at the different types of innovation. So how do you proceed to know the type of innovation needed to enter a mature industry? So that's the question you may be asking yourself now, that when you have understood these three types of innovation, now you are faced with the situation when you have an idea and you want to enter a market. Okay, so how do you choose that? How do you understand what customers really want? That's going to lead us to the next concept, which is discovering customer jobs to be done, which is very critical, not only to disruptive innovation, but to every innovation. And we look at how the concept of customer jobs, and then how you can go ahead to discover the customer jobs. Now, what happens is that the one problem that businesses fail is that most products fail because they focus on correlations and not on causality. So they focus on things like maybe when they want to segment their market, they look at things like age. They segment the market in terms of age, in terms of gender, or in terms of location, and so on. Those are attributes that are just correlated to the buying behavior of the customer. But they fail to understand what actually causes the customer to buy a product or service. Unless you understand what causes the customer to buy a product or service, you will not be able to come up with a sustainable, disruptive innovation. And now, what is a job? When we're talking about a job is a problem that a person is trying to solve. And customers don't really buy products. You need to know this. Customers don't really buy products. They hire those products to get a job done. Let's stick to the example of the education industry. So why do people go to school? Well, people go to school for many reasons. And the reasons for each person has their reason for going to school. But ultimately, most people go to school in order to, maybe people who are already employed, they go to school in order to acquire the skills that will help them get a promotion. So that's the problem that they want to solve. They want to get a promotion, or they want to change a job and go to a better job. They don't want to take a finance course. They don't want to take a marketing course. They want to get a promotion. You need to get this very clear. They are hiring the marketing course, or they're hiring an MBA course or program that will help them to acquire the skills that will help them get the job done. The job they want to get done is that they want to get a promotion. And so in the education business, for example, in a university, if the program is not designed around that job in such a way that it gives that customer, who is that learner, the possibility of fulfilling that job, such that the skills that are integrated in that program are such that they are going to be able to, is going to increase their chances of getting a promotion, or is going to increase their chance of getting a better job, then that program is not designed around a customer job to be done. So if programs are only designed, if you just think about maybe say that people of this age, they will like this course, people of this country, or people of this gender, they will like this. If you segment the market not based on the job to be done, then the program you are going to design in the university is not going to help the customer nail that job. And that can open a lot of doors for disruptors. So the concept of job to be done is very important, and you need to understand this. And these are some examples of customer jobs to be done. So why do somebody subscribe to Netflix? Maybe they just want to, they want to avoid the inconvenience of going to a movie shop. Yes. So they want, and that is exactly what Netflix did. So jobs to be done are always structured like help me. So if you want to identify a job to be done, a customer job, you need to frame it like, what does the customer want you to help him or her do? Help me avoid the inconvenience of going to a movie shop. Help me connect and share with my friends. That's another example. I need an affordable apartment in my new city. Okay, so these are problems that customers want to solve. And these are the problems around which those services like Netflix, Facebook, and maybe Airbnb, they have built their business around those customer jobs to be done. The jobs are always persistent. The jobs are always there. The technology comes and goes, but the jobs are always there. So that's why with time, you always have solutions that keeps on the different types of solutions. When technologies come out, different solutions come to solve the same problems in a better way, because the jobs stay. The jobs are always there, but the technology changes. And so what you need to keep in mind is that you need to develop that job to be done perspective. The job to be done perspective focuses on what causes a customer to buy a product, rather than relying on attributes like age, gender, income that are merely correlated with the buying behavior. So those attributes like age, gender, income, they don't cause the buying behavior. They are correlated. That means there's a relation between them. For example, someone with a higher income has a higher possibility of buying a product or service. But it doesn't cause that person. It doesn't mean that when somebody has higher income, then the person will automatically buy a product or service. The product should be able to solve the person's problem. So customers do not buy products or services. They hire them so that they can help them to solve the jobs, solve the problems that they have, to solve the jobs that are struggling to get done. And now another aspect of jobs to be done is that you don't need to look at jobs to be done only from a functional perspective. If the jobs to be done have, in addition to the functional perspective, they also have the emotional perspective, the emotional, what we call the emotional dimension. So what is the functional dimension? Is that practical role that a product or service fulfills? For example, the iPhone. What is the practical role that the iPhone fulfills? It helps you to call. It helps you to connect with friends, maybe through the apps that you install, and many other functionalities, okay? So now there's another emotional part of the job to be done, or the job that a customer wants to get done. So apart from those functionalities, the customer also wants that feeling, the feeling that they get from owning or using a product or service. And this is what most brands like Apple have used to their advantage. Okay, they have used this emotional part to their advantage, because you see that most people, when Apple is about to release a new product, you see that you have a lot of pre-commands. People want to have it first because of that feeling that they want to get, maybe from their friends or from their family, as the first people to have that product. Okay, so there's an emotional part of the job to be done, which you also need to consider when you're building your innovation. And so how do you discover this customer job to be done? What you do is that you need to observe the incumbent customers. Since your role, what you want to do is to enter an established industry or an established market. So you want to enter that market, you need to, like, for example, since you already have an understanding of low-end and new market disruptive innovation, and you are targeting low end of the market, you need to observe customers at that low end of the market. Observation is very important. And you need to discover why the former customers left. So if there are customers that stop using the product or service, you need to find those customers that stop buying from the incumbent. And you need to know why they left. The answers to the question of why they left is that they are going to give you insight on what the incumbent has been neglecting. on what the jobs that those customers have been trying to fulfill, but which the incumbent offer, product or service, is not helping them to fulfill. Maybe because the incumbent's product or service is only focused and built around the needs of the high-end market, people, the most profitable part of the market. And another way that that you can identify customer job is by identifying the workarounds that customers use to get a job done. So when a product is not defined for you, if it's not built around your job, the problem that you want to get solved, you see that most customers, they will have workarounds. They will try to implement some workarounds. They will take the product and twist it. They will try to whatever they can do in order to solve the problem that they want to get solved. So if you observe customers and see that they are struggling with the product and service, maybe the user interface of a product or a service, that's an opportunity for you to identify that what is currently there, what the incumbent in the mature company that is existing, what they are providing, doesn't really nail the customer job. And that's an opportunity for you. You need to identify that. And you can also reflect on your own experiences. So it's not only about observing other people. Your own experience is very important because you are also a customer. So what are some of the frustrations that you have when you are in using a product or a service, in buying a product or a service, or in using a product or a service, or in getting a product or service to solve the problem that you first of all, you had the problem that you had before looking for that product or service in the first place. So another way for you to do that is to reflect on your own experience. And that's why most innovations come from people who have lived the experience and they know the frustrations of the customers. So these are some of the ways that you can identify the customer jobs to be done by observing the incumbent customers, discovering why the former customers left, identifying the workarounds that the customers use to get the job done today, and also by reflecting on your own experiences. Now, we have looked at very important concepts. We have looked at the 3 types of innovation. The sustaining innovation, we have looked at the low-end disruptive innovation, and we have looked at the new market disruptive innovation. Now, we ask ourselves, how do you identify which innovation is adapted for a particular context? And especially, how do you identify what you need to innovate around? That took us to discover customer jobs and having that perspective that customers are not out there to buy products and services. They are out there to hire the products and services that help them to solve their problems. So having understood these 2 concepts, we now move to the core, which is about leveraging that disruptive innovation to enter mature markets. So let's look at the steps that you can do immediately after this webinar in order to launch your product, in order to launch your company, or in a business, in an industry that is already considered to be saturated. So you are looking at an industry and you think that the players there are so powerful. So how can you leverage disruptive innovation to enter those industries? So there are 4 steps here, and they are going to come from the application. The first 2 are like the application of what we have seen right from the beginning of this webinar. So the first you need to do is you need to discover unfulfilled customer jobs at the low end of the market. The second is you need to select a suitable type of innovation. Then you need to build the capabilities that you need in order to grow, and you need to manage a disruptive scope. Let's get into each of them to understand what they all mean. Now, the first one, which is about discovering unfulfilled customer jobs, it just entails that you observe customers at the low end of the incumbents market. So you want to launch, you want to enter a market which already has a very strong or very powerful incumbents. Those are companies that have been existing there maybe for a lot of years, and they have had a lot of market share, and they have a lot of segments. They have segments they hire, they have customers that they pay a lot of attention to. Then you have the customers that they pay least attention to, and then some other customers are the mainstream of the market. So what you can do first is to observe the customers at the low end of that market. You can talk with the customers that stop buying from the incumbent. It's very important to talk with them. So it's not only about talking with them, you need to talk with them and also observe them in order to understand the essential jobs that the incumbent is not helping them to fulfill. And to do that, you can use the design, one tool called the innovation tool called the design thinking tool that can help you to reveal hidden customer jobs, because customers will not be able to tell you everything that you want to know, because sometimes customers do not know what they want. So, but just by observing them or using some tools, you can be able to reveal those hidden insights that they are not able to tell you verbally. And now, when you have identified the unfulfilled customer jobs, then you need to choose the appropriate type of innovation. So you need to choose the appropriate type of disruptive innovation that you are going to use in order to enter the market. So you need to ask yourself this question: which type of disruptive innovation will be a sustainable approach to address the identified jobs, the jobs that are identified in the previous stage? You know already that sustaining innovation battles are likely to be won by incumbents. So I don't advise you to go that way, purposely because this does not focus. There are other strategies that companies use in order to win sustaining battles. But the focus of this webinar is about disruptive innovation. So low-end disruptive innovation and new market disruptive innovation are key opportunities for you as a type of innovation that you can use to enter such market to help to address those jobs that you have identified. And so when you have already decided which type of disruptive innovation, then you need to ask yourself which product or service should you develop in order to address the identified jobs. Of course, the product that you're going to have is another version of solutions that are existing out there. Because for every problem out there that a customer has, there are tons and tons of solutions. There are tons and tons of products and services that are designed to address it, but not all of them are designed around the customer job. So which product or service are you going to design in order to address the job that you have identified? And then the third question you ask is, what are the experiences in purchasing and using the product or service that you need to provide in order to get the job done perfectly? So here you need to understand that it's not only about using the service. The experience of the customer starts when they get to know about it, right, to when they will buy it before even using the product or service. So all those experiences count. So how do you design those experiences? And that's an opportunity where technology can come and help you. Technologies like digital technologies, for example, artificial intelligence, the Internet of Things, blockchain, or the cloud, all those technologies and infrastructure, they can come to help you to design those experiences. The experiences, maybe by automating some of the things that the incumbent is doing manually, and they're wasting time, and they're also costly. You could use technology in order to come up with a solution that is good enough. Understand that you are looking for something that is good enough for the low end of the market, something that is just good enough. You don't want a solution that from day one is going to have the same performance as that one that the incumbent is using at the upper end of the market. You need something that's just good enough and at a lower price, just sufficient to win the business at the low end of the market. So you can see that technologies, for example, with the cloud, you don't need to buy infrastructure. You don't need to buy any servers. Sometimes you don't need to invest in networking or security. All of those drop the cost, and at the end, they drop the price that you're going to ask from the customer. And then when you give a solution that is just good enough for them and at the price that they can afford, then you're on your way to disrupt the incumbent that's not doing that. And now, when you've identified the type of innovation that you need to deploy in order to nail the customer jobs that you have identified, then the next logical step is for you to build the capabilities that you need. You need capabilities. Every business needs a good number of capabilities, not only to enter the market, but to sustain and grow. And many innovations actually fail because the wrong resources, processes, and profit formula are used. So the capabilities that we are going to talk about here, there are 3 types of capabilities you need to think about when you're talking about a startup, when you're talking about you want to be a disruptor. So the first one is resources. The resources are those things that you can hire or fire, or the things that you can buy, things that can be bought or sold. And most of them are flexible and transferable. For example, technology, people, products, cash, and facilities. All those are examples of resources. Those are resources that you need. If you think that the solution that you need in order to disrupt is a solution around artificial intelligence, maybe you need to get a customized solution that is going to personalize the experience for each customer by learning from past data, maybe like machine learning. That is a technology choice that you make, and that's a resource that you can acquire. And then you need people with whom you need to work in order to do that. Then you need products as well, you need cash. So these are the resources that you need. And then apart from the resources, the next capability that you need are the processes. So the resources on their own will not get the job done. You need to combine those resources. So the processes are what they are: the patterns of interactions, coordination, and decision-making through which your organization transforms input into products and services. For example, you have the product development process, maybe the budgeting process. For example, the product development process is going to, what are the inputs? Going to have all the ideas. It's going to come, the inputs will be the ideas, going to be the choice of the strategy, the customer jobs that you have discovered. All of that is going to enter into the product as inputs in the product development process. And then the output is going to be the product or the service that is going to help to nail the customer job. And then the third capability that you need the third part capability that you need is the profit formula. This is very, very, very important concept that so many entrepreneurs overlook, which is you need to understand the concept of the profit formula as one of the capabilities that you need. Because it is the criteria your organization will use to prioritize one option over another. So this is the thing that is going to guide this decision, such as which proposal to fund, which customer should you call, which customer should you serve, or which product feature should you develop. Okay. This is when you look at this is where the difficulty comes for established incumbents. In mature industries, this is one of the reasons that it's very difficult for them to win disruptive battles, because the criteria for which they select their projects are the thresholds are so high. For example, if they are looking at return on investment, if the return on investment is a key criterion in the choice of any project that is going to be sponsored in the organization, then it means that those projects that could help at the low end of the market. The low end of the market is a segment that is the least profitable. And so those projects that will help to satisfy the problems of customers in the lower segment may not be interesting to a large incumbent, and so they will not choose it. And that is exactly because they are looking for efficiency. They want the high return on investment to the efforts and all the cash that they put in. Another criteria could be the gross margin, okay, or the type of customer or the type of order. So the criteria that you choose, now you as an entrepreneur, as somebody who's launching the business, you are going to have to go through a series of experiments, because as entrepreneurship is about experimentation. You're going to learn. And so there are some projects that you're going to launch where you not have a lot of visibility about how those projects are going to bring returns on investment. So if your profit formula is such that it doesn't permit those kind of projects, it will be difficult for you to innovate, because innovation is about experimentation, about trying things. You need to try things, you need to design experiments, execute them, learn from them, and keep changing, pivoting, and so on and so forth as you go. So the profit formula is a very important component of the capabilities that you need to build. So you have the resources, the processes, and the profit formula. And so you need to understand that the right is not sufficient for you to identify the innovation that you want to deploy. Many innovations fail because the wrong resources or the wrong processes or the wrong profit formulas are used. And so you need to have a good understanding of these concepts in order and apply them to manage the disruption that you want to when you want to enter any mature industry. Now the fourth step, which is the last step, is that you need to manage the disruptive scope. So you have done your studies and you have understood what are those customer jobs, and then you have discovered the technology that you need to, the type of innovation that you need to deploy, and then you're building the capabilities. Now you need to be able to predict the direction of that industry. You need to be able to predict the direction of that industry that you want to enter, because there are some industries. Because if you don't understand the direction that the industry is taking, then it will be difficult for you to choose an optimal strategy. So when you know the direction that the industry is taking, then you will be able to know the basis of competition. What are the basis of competition at this point? What do I need to do? On which are those aspects that I need to be good at in order to succeed? So you need, when you're able to predict the direction of the industry, then you're able to understand the basic competition, and you also be able to choose an optimal strategy. So this is an example here. Here you see that at the early stages of a product or at the early stages of an industry, the architecture of the value chain is always very interdependent. That means everything depends on the other. What you do first before doing the other, and so on and so forth, to transform the input into output, they are always very interdependent, because the interfaces between the various components of the value chain, they are not yet known. They are still unpredictable at the early stages. But then with time, those interfaces separate and they become well known, such that the interaction between the various components of the value chain are predictable. And in that case, we say that we have evolved to a modular architecture. So we move with time. When you want to look at the direction of the industry, you want to see whether the industry is still at the early stage, okay, either industry or the product, yeah. Whether it's still at the early stage or it's already at this modular stage. And what happens is that when you are still here, that's when it's not yet, when it's not yet modular, when you are still at the early stages, when the industry is still at the early stages, then there is often a performance gap because the incumbents or entrants, in fact, the companies, the businesses that are in that industry are still struggling to meet the expected performance level that customers want from them. And so you need to optimize. The basis of competition are functionality and reliability. So you need to optimize functionality and reliability if you are still at this stage here. So if you notice that the industry you want to enter is still very interdependent. So if the value chain is still very interdependent. In fact, let me give an example for you to understand this. So in the early stages, in the early years of the phone, when they were still producing the phone, you see that one player would do everything. For example, Nokia or Motorola, they will produce almost all the components of the phone. That was because most of those components depended on each other. The battery depended on the on the motherboard, many other components that make up the phone. They were very interdependent, and that's why each player had to be competent in producing everything. But now you see that today it has become modular, so that different companies are already specializing on different things. We have companies that manufacture just the screen. We have companies that manufacture the battery, and so on. So that's an example of a modular architecture. So if you are entering, we'll see in the next slide the type of strategy that you can use at each of these stages. So at the initial stages, there's still a performance gap. And so what you need to do is I need to optimize functionality and reliability by integrating, meaning that you need to do almost everything. Because if you allow one part to be done by another person, by another company, when the output they are going to have is so dependent on what the output that another company is also going to produce, you might have difficulties in putting all those components together. So on the other hand, when the industry is already modular, then the basis of competition change. So in this case, you need to be very fast. You need to be flexible, and you need to be responsive. So now, taking the example of the phone, of the telephone, you see that if you are specialized in producing battery, you need to be very fast. As technology is improving, you also need to catch up. You need to be flexible, you need to be responsive because you are specialized in something. So this is important to you because if you enter an industry that is still at this stage and you are aiming to be fast, flexible, and responsive, then you are likely going to fail because your product is not yet good enough. First of all, you need to optimize functionality and reliability to be able to solve the customer problem. This is what they expect. And it's after that you are going to see how the different components of the value chain interact with each other. And when you are at this stage now, you need to change the mindset. So if you are entering an industry that is already modular, the mindset changes because you need to choose now which component you need to focus on. You don't need to do everything. If you want to do everything and solve problems that have already been solved, then you end up burning resources and wasting a lot of time and not getting the return on investment. So when you have understood the basis of competition, so these are the basis of competition. At this stage, the basis of competition is that you need to, here you focus on functionality and reliability. And at this stage, here, the basis of competition are speed, flexibility, and responsiveness. Now, what strategy the optimal strategy you need to adopt at each stage, at this stage here, is that right down here, you need to have an integrated strategy. An integrated strategy because you need to integrate as much as possible. You need to do everything yourself as much as possible. Just like, for example, you launch a service, maybe you launched a new restaurant application that does delivery, okay, that does delivery to customers at their homes. So at the start, since your product is not yet good enough, you need to integrate. Integration means that you need to do almost everything on the value chain, forward, integrate, backward, and forward. You need to do almost everything. You need to have a good hold of how the delivery is taking place. You cannot outsource it yet to anybody because the interface between all those companies is not yet well defined. You cannot yet write a contract to give a subcontractor that this is what I expect from you. Because at this stage, you are still learning. You are still learning to come up with a product. You still have a performance gap. You are still learning to have that performance that is good enough for the customers. So an integrated strategy, the strategy that is recommended for you if you are entering an industry that is at this stage, or if you are developing a product that is new, very new, and a lot of problems that need to be solved in order to deliver that product are not yet solved. But now, at the level of if it's already a modular architecture, then you need to have a specialized strategy. So it could happen that you are entering an industry that is already modular. So you need to have a specialized strategy. You need to specialize on something. You need to choose which component to focus on because a lot of people are already good at a lot of things. A lot of problems have already been solved from their own past experience. You don't need to spend time trying to solve a problem that's already been solved. And now, how do you choose that component? That's not a key question. The key question now is, how do you choose that component? Now, in disruptive innovation, you always need to choose that component, which is called a performance-defining component. The performance-defining component is the component that customers care most about. So if you have a restaurant business that does delivery, what on that value chain do customers care most about? Let's consider two components like the food preparation. And then the second one is maybe the delivery. So which of those components do customers care most about? Is it about the quality of the food? Or do they care most about getting the food very fast at the time? So if they care most about the quality of the food, then you can enter that market and focus on delivering the best quality for the food, and then get another player or another company and outsource the component that has to do with delivery, because you know that the customer can forgive you if there's a problem. So you need to choose the performance defining component that performance, that is the component that from the customer perspective, okay, is the component they care most about. And how do you do that? How do you get to identify that? It's still by discovering customer job to be done. And that's why the job to be done is very important. So this is very important, the choice of the strategy you are going to use. So the key thing you need to understand here is that once you have chosen to be disruptive, you need to stay disruptive. You don't need to try to serve high-end customers too soon. So you have entered the low-end part of the market, and you're getting better and better with time. Maintain that disruptive scope, because you are going to, you don't want to, at the early stages when you are still struggling to learn the market, you don't want to start going head-on with the incumbent. So even if there is an opportunity for you to serve a customer at the high end of the market, you need to resist that. And you need to stay at a level where they're going to ignore you. It's very important. So you need to stay at the low end of the market so that they ignore you, because you are going to, at the low end of the market, you are working with customers that are not profitable to them. But you are actually eating up their market share gradually, slowly, right up to the high end of the market. So resist that temptation of moving so fast to the high end of the market, even the opportunity comes. And then after everything, you don't need to regard your strategy at any point as the right strategy. If you are successful at any point, then you temporarily have a good strategy. This is very important as an entrepreneur. You don't need to regard that you have a right strategy. That's why you need to be open every time to ideas. You need to learn from customers. And that is why new technologies like, in fact, things like analytics, okay? All these technologies that leverage data in order to generate insights and learn from the market. All these technologies are very important because they help you to learn. They help you to learn. The entrepreneurship is a learning process. So you never regard that your strategy is the right strategy. You need to stay open and keep on changing and adapting as the situation evolves. Because you're not going to be operating in an empty space where there are no when there are no companies. There are going to be other new entrants. There are going to be entrants that are going to enter the market after you, who will try to solve the same problem like you. And you may have to change certain things, you have to modify certain things. Even the incumbents are going to react. Yes, they will react. And that will surely be the purpose of our next webinar. When we'll be looking at today, we are looking at a disruption from the point of view of the entrant, okay, the disruptor, we want to disrupt. Now, the second thing you need to have in mind, the key thing is that I've already explained that you always need to skate to where the performance defining component of the industry or value chain will be. So you need to be able to predict and know how the industry is evolving from the integrated to the modular, okay? All of that, how it is evolving. And skate and choose the component. In time, you need to choose a component that is the performance defining component. And that could change with time also. That is the component that is the performance defining component today will get very better and become so, and become like a commodity that anybody can deliver, okay? And that is going to be dangerous from the point of view of competition. So at that point, you need to now shift and identify the next performance defining component, which is the component that the customers care most about at that particular time. And understand that identifying and building around customer jobs to be done is actually what builds the barrier to entry around your company. The jobs are always going to be there. The customer jobs are always going to be there. Technology will come and pass. Solutions will come and pass. A lot of solutions, a lot of products are there out there to address similar problems of customers, different versions. The customer problems are there. But the technologies and different solutions, the numerous solutions will come and pass. Okay? And at every time you need to, if you build your innovation around customer jobs, then that will be a critical barrier that is going to shield your company from any new entrants. And that is going to be a big potential, a potential competitive advantage that you must have developed. So we started by looking at the types of innovation. So we looked at the sustaining innovation. Then we looked at the disruptive innovation, which are the low-end disruptive innovation and the new market disruptive innovation. So when we understood the types of innovation, we now looked at how to discover customer jobs. And then we have used all of this knowledge in order to to understand how to leverage this disruptive innovation to enter the mature industries. So it was first important for you to understand that not every innovation is disruptive. And so now we have concluded with this part of leveraging the disruptive innovation in order to enter mature industries. And I hope you have a good hold of that. And this webinar has been focused on the entrance perspective. So you are the entrant, you are the entrepreneur, okay? You want to enter the market. So you want to disrupt. But of course, in business, you are going to have a lot of feedback. Most of the incumbents have also learned how to react to disruptors. They've also learned how to conserve their market share, even if they are pursuing high performance at the high end of the market. So you also need to know how they are going to how they are going to react, and that is the purpose of our next webinar, which I guess is the same time next week, and that's how a mature company can respond to disruption from new entrants. So you need to know this in order to know how those companies, the incumbents, are going to react to you, and how you can be able to structure yourself to win them. And also, if you are a corporate leader, you are working in an incumbent today, then this next webinar is going to be very important for you, because beyond the sustainable innovation that you're doing in your company today, you can also do disruptive innovation. And there is a certain way that you need to do that. You cannot disrupt yourself, okay? But there's a certain way that you need to structure yourself in order to respond to disruptive innovation. If you are a big company already, if you are an established company in a mature industry, there are a series of techniques that you need to use in order to respond effectively to disruptive innovation in such a way that you will not cannibalize your core business. And this we are going to see in our next webinar. So from here, you can, all of you who have attended this webinar, my contacts are here. I thought I should share my contacts with you. So you may be at the stage where you want to choose, you still want to launch a product, a new product or service, and then you want to choose a disruptive strategy. So you think that a particular industry is already so saturated, and you don't know how you can tackle, how you can position your product and the type of customers that you can be able to that you can target first, in order to first of all overcome the initial challenges of the journey. Or maybe you already have a product. Maybe you already have a product, and that product is the product is already working so well, or the product has some issues, or you just want to assess and analyze the product. Maybe you did not think about the strategy, how that product is positioned in the market with respect to other incumbents and so on. And you really want to understand the strategy behind the product and come up with the right strategy that is going to be sustainable. Or maybe you are still figuring out which industry or market you want to enter into. So I can help you with that. For example, you can look at the customer jobs to be done with the experience that I've had in helping companies and to figure out all these kind of problems in the digital transformation journeys. I've been able to come up with the patterns and the questionnaires and the approaches that you can use in order to uncover the customer jobs. And also, I can also be able to help you assess your current strategy and maybe recommend the updates that you can make in order to make it sustainable and disruptive. And if you want to enter a new industry, I can also help you to assess that target industry so that you can be very clear about the basis of competition and then about the optimal strategy you should adopt in order to enter the market. And so with this, I thank you all for your kind attention, and I am open to any questions that you may have. I first give the floor to Dr. Abdulrahman. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Lambert. Thank you so much for explaining, sharing in detail about leveraging disruptive innovation. So we will continue with Q&A session. To all participants who want to ask some question, you can raise hand or via chat room, please. And by the way, the attendance in the chat room.
Okay, Pak Dhani.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Lambert, for your clear explanation to us about how to build smart strategies. We are, as entrepreneurs, as entrants or incumbents, so you explain us about the strategies. Yeah, there are three types of innovation that we can apply. So our business. So if my student as new entrant to business, especially in digital business. So your explanation is more useful for, I think for entrants, this is very, very useful. Your strategy that you explained to us. Yeah. Thank you very much, Mr. Lambert. Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Abdulrahman. You're welcome.
Maybe some question is about how to build capabilities. Yeah. That you mentioned just now that capabilities is combination about three components: technology, process, and resources. Yeah. So about the process, if we use the strategy in company or in enterprise, maybe how to build simple business process. Maybe we can eliminate that business process we doesn't have value, so we can eliminate it. Yeah, maybe we can conduct business process architecture by using, for example, enterprise architecture. Yeah? So when we conduct enterprise architecture, we can begin with the business architecture, consists of business process architecture and the others. So technology and resources will follow this business architecture. Is it correct, Mr. Lambert?
Yes, the three components of the capabilities are actually you start with the resources, then the processes and the profit formula. Yes, and your question, yes, your question is you're asking a question from the point of view of an incumbent. You already have an organization that is existing, and you want to eliminate processes that are not effective, and you want to come up with the processes that are going to create value. So, as I explained, the strategy for an incumbent to respond to innovation is different, and that's what we're going to see in the next webinar. But for the entrant, what you need to do is that you need to understand that the processes are what transforms the input into output. So basically, you need to have those processes in place, and they could start from by you doing things manually, and then when the things become clear, then you standardize the processes. So when we talk about process, you don't need to confuse the process with procedures. Okay. So when you talk about process, some people think about the long processes that make things slow. No, but basically a process is what transforms an input to an output. So you have those inputs that are already at the level of the resources, which are the technology, the people, all the ideas that you have, and so on. And then you need to transform those inputs into products and services. And then the mindset that you have, which is the profit formula. Now the mindset that you have, that's the set of criteria that determine what you choose, what you focus on, where you put your priority, is also a very key component of the capabilities that you need to build in order to succeed as a disruptive innovator.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Lambert. Maybe the other question from participant.
Maybe from me to you, Mr. Lambert. My question is, how about BPR, business process reengineering? It could be impacted to this leverage disruptive innovation.
Okay, now from the business process engineering. So how are you looking at it? Do you want to enter? Do you want to provide business process engineering solutions? Is that from that perspective? Like, do you want to? Are you asking the question like, how can you provide the business process engineering companies?
Yeah, to simplify for our business process. Like you said that we have three aspects. One of the three aspects is the process.
Okay. Okay, yes. So for the process, if you are looking to improve your process, because improving the process is another way of building the capabilities. Yes. So when at the start, maybe the process may not be very optimal, and then with time you need to tune the process so that it helps to transform the inputs that you have into the output that you need for the customers at the lowest cost possible. So in that case, I see the business process engineering as one of the activities that you do to build those the process part of the capabilities. But now, if the question is gearing towards how can you help, if you are a consulting company and you want to help other businesses to do business process engineering, then you need to look at the industry that you are getting into. So you are entering an industry where you already have other consulting companies that are doing the same. There are established consulting companies that are already providing those services to customers. And a good number of them are focusing on maybe the high end of their market. So you need to understand that that industry and see whether there's a low end of that market that those big consulting companies are neglecting, so that you can understand what those clients need as essential services, and what are the key jobs that they want to get done, maybe at a lower cost, for which you can develop more optimal solutions that are just good enough for them at the beginning and at lower cost, and help them with the business process engineering. Yeah, so I've answered the question from the point of view of you building your capabilities, and also from the point of view of you helping others to build capabilities, maybe as a consulting company.
Okay, thank you very much for your answer. Abdul Rahman, Mr. Abdul Rahman, I think now it's 5:20 in the evening in Indonesia.
Yes,
or maybe from participants, there's a question. Okay, I think we have to close the webinar, but before we close, Pak Abdul Rahman, would you mind giving a closing statement for today's webinar?
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Dani, Mr. Lambert. we have performed this international webinar. The topic is about how to build smart strategies in innovation, yeah, as entrepreneur, that is entrance or incumbent in this digital business disruption. So, Mr. Lambert has explained us about the capability and the type of innovation that we can use in our business, in our organization as individual or part of an organization in our organization. I think this is very useful for us, yeah, that we can apply this strategy from Mr. Lambert, yeah, to our business. For example, in our university, STEMIC Bandung, we can use this strategy how to improve our value for our customer, yeah, by 3 types of innovation that Mr. Lambert explained us. So for our participant, yeah, thank you very much for your time to join us in this webinar. So we will meet you again next week, Mr. Lambert, and we will learn more about the strategy building in digital business, in digital economy too. Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Lambert and Pak Dhani.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Abdul Rahman and Mr. Lambert. And once again, thank you, all participants,
Thank you.
speakers, Mr. Lambert and Mr. Abdul Rahman, and supporting team besides me for coming. And hopefully we will meet again in the next international webinar series of STEMIC Bandung in next Tuesday with the same speaker, the same time about different topic. Stay healthy, stay safe, be happy and productive. Thank you very much, Mr. Lambert, Mr. Abdurrahman, and all of you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Lambert. See you next week.
Thank you so much.
Yes, see you.
Thank you so much.
I hope you enjoy, Mr. Lambert. Yeah.